All righty. So Genesis chapter 37. We'll start here at verse 1. We'll read a few verses here, and then we'll get going. And of course, we've got Jacob shown up again. We dealt with in chapter 36 Esau, and we get back to Jacob in chapter 37, mainly just to be introduced to Joseph and what's going to take place after that. But notice in Genesis chapter 37, we'll start at verse 1. And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah, and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him, and could not speak peaceably unto him. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear I pray you this dream which I have dreamed. Father, we thank you for the opportunity that we have to study your word. And as we continue going through the Bible, again, our goal is that we just allow your word to be the final authority in all things. And it's in Christ's name that we pray. Amen. Now, of course, this gets us into the coat of many colors, and then we're going to get into the dream here in just a moment. One of the things that we notice right off the very, very beginning here is we've got in verse 1, where are they? They're in the land of Canaan, right? In verse 2, these are the generations of Jacob. And he brings out Joseph. And what do we find out about Joseph? Well, he's 17 years old. He's out feeding his flock with his brethren, with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all of his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And of course, insert favorite son or daughter joke there, right? No one has one, but everybody has one, right? But here's the thing. What do we find out about this is there's something specific that's taking place here, and we're going to find out what that's going to lead to here in a minute. So what they're doing, they're out working in the field. Joseph hears about what the brothers are planning on doing. He goes back to the father, and notice what we see here. Verse 4, after he makes the coat of many colors, verse 4, and when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. Well, who is it that they hated? Joseph, not the father, right? So it's completely directed towards Joseph himself, right? And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. And Joseph dreamed a dream. And just when you think it couldn't get any worse, it's about to, right? And he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear I pray you this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said unto him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us? And shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. Now, when we talk about this issue, the thing that we see here, what's he telling them? Here's the dream that I had. We're out binding sheaves. My sheaf raises up, it stands upright. And then he says, and behold, your sheaves stood round about and made obeisance to my sheaf. Now, of course, the idea there is, do they rightfully understand what he's talking about? Right? Huh? You think kinda? And if you look at verse 8, he says, And his brethren said to him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us, or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. Now, what is it that they automatically get from this is what? We're going to have to obey you. And that's what they're going after, right? You're going to reign over us. You're going to have dominion over us. And they hated him because of that. Verse 9, and he dreamed yet another dream, and he told it his brethren and said, by the way, first of all, if you have a dream where something like that takes place, how many people today would go and tell their brothers, hey, guess what I dreamed? You're going to have to fall down and be obedient to me. Anyway, not many people do that, right? But here he dreams another dream in verse 9, and he told it his brethren and said, behold, I have dreamed a dream more, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. Now, you stop and you think about where's their head going to be now. Not only are you telling us that we're going to have to be obedient to you, but now you're saying the sun, moon, and stars are? Not just stars, but the 11 stars, right? Verse 10, and he told it to his father and to his brethren, and his father rebuked him and said unto him, what is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee to the earth? And his brethren envied him, but his father observed the saying. Now, notice the difference between his response and their response, right? He's observing. He's going to take a look at it and see what's going on. But their response is what? They envy him. Now, verse 12, it says, and his brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said unto him, here am I. Now, of course, we've talked about that phrase, here am I. It shows up a lot, right? And it's just interesting that always kind of shows up. So kind of keep that in mind as we continue going on. But verse 14, and he said to him, go, I pray thee, see whether it be well with thy brethren, and well with the flocks, and bring me word again. So he sent him out the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a certain man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, what seekest thou? And he said, I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they feed their flocks. So Joseph goes out, as he's told to. He goes out to find them. Verse 17, and the man said, they are departed hence, for I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. And Joseph went after his brethren and found them in Dothan. And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. And they said one to another, behold, this dreamer cometh. Now, there's a bunch of things that's taking place here. One, we already know something about Jacob's sons to begin with, right? We remember what they did back in the day. We understand they're probably not your model citizens, right, to begin with. And so then here they are, because of this dream, their idea is what? Let's kill him. And it's interesting to me, in verse 19, it says, and they said one to another, behold, this dreamer cometh. It's just one of those things like, here's this guy, this dreamer guy, here he comes, right? Verse 20, come now therefore and let us slay him and cast him into some pit, and we will say. Now, notice what's taking place here. How is it that they reacted a few chapters ago? They just go in and they kill every man in the city, right? And so then you take a look at this. What did they do in that situation? They said, well, if you all get circumcised, then we'll all be brothers together. And they do this, and they're planning this whole thing out. And then they go through and they do exactly what they're doing. The same thing that we got here. And notice again, and the reason I said in verse 19 is like, behold, this dreamer cometh. Verse 20, come now therefore and let us slay him and cast him into what? Some pit. Just an arbitrary place that we can find. We're going to cast him. Doesn't matter which pit, just some pit. To me, it's interesting that here's this guy coming. Let's just kill him and put him in some pit somewhere. They have no regard for him at all. And we will say, so again, there's this issue of they're conspiring to be able to do this, right? And we will say, some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. Now their whole goal here is, or the whole motivation here for what they're doing is what? The dream. That's why they're saying this dreamer cometh, right? And so then they're going to say, well, if we get rid of him, what's going to happen? Well, his sheaf can't stand up straight and can't grow bigger, and they're not going to have to be obedient to him, right? That's their thought process. And we talked earlier about Reuben, right? And notice in verse 21, and Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not kill him. So you've got the one voice of reason there that brings it up, says, let's not do that. Verse 22, and Reuben said unto them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness. Now, notice what Reuben does here. It's not just some pit, but it's what? Let's cast him into this pit, where? In the wilderness, right? He says, but cast him into this pit in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands to deliver him to his father again. His whole goal was to do what? I want to save him, get him back to the father, and tell him, here's what's going on, right? That's his whole goal. That's the reason that he's doing what he's doing here. And he says, let's put him in this pit. And one of the reasons why they say put him in this pit is why? If we just put him in some pit, may not find it. But he says, let's put him here so I'll know exactly where he is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And so you think about what's going on here and all the background, if you will. Verse 23, and it came to pass when Joseph was coming to his brethren that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty, there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels, bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah said unto his brethren, what profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh, and his brethren were content. So their final decision is what? Let's make money off of him if we can. Let's not kill him. Let's make money off of him. And that's exactly what they end up doing, right? So they cast him down in the pit. So what are they going to have to do is they're going to have to do what? Well, now we got to get him out because we're going to sell him, right? Verse 28. Then there passed by Midianites, merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Joseph into Egypt. And Reuben returned into the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit, and he rent his clothes. So Reuben goes back to get him, because Reuben's thinking what? He's still there. He gets there to the pit, finds that he's not there. Verse 30, and he returned unto his brethren and said, this child is not, and whither shall I go? And they took Joseph's coat, and killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the coat in the blood. And they sent the coat of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, this have we found. Know now whether it be thy son's coat or no. Now, do they know it's Joseph's coat? And so they're saying, here we found this coat. Is this the one that you gave Joseph? And it's just one thing right after another. They're trying to cover up and try to cover up and try to cover up. And it's this whole elaborate system to get rid of him. And anyway, let's continue on. So when you see that's taking place, what do? They take the coat, they get the kid of the goats, they dip the coat in the blood to make it look as if Joseph was killed by something. Probably not people, but something else, right? But the idea is when they go back, they're trying to make it look like to Jacob that Joseph has been killed somehow, some way. All we did is we found this, right? Every one of them knew that Joseph was going to be traveling on his own to go find them. Instead of where they're supposed to be, they go off to Dothan instead of Shechem. And so everybody's based on what they've got so far. They've got Reuben's the only one that's just like, wait a minute, he's supposed to be here and he's not. Where is he? Verse 33. And here's what's interesting. He says, and he knew it not and said, and he knew it and said, it is my son's coat. An evil beast hath devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces. So his thought process is just what? It just goes directly to some wild beast has killed him. and his pieces are all over the place, right? He's torn into pieces. Verse 34, and Jacob rent his clothes and put sackcloth upon his loins and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, for I will go down into the grave unto my son mourning. Thus his father wept for him, and the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and a captain of the guard. Now, in verse 35, they're continuing this whole story, if you will. His sons and his daughters tried to comfort him. The same ones that what? Wanted to kill him, wanted to leave him in some pit, chose let's take him and let's sell him. These are the same ones that show up and say what? What can we do to help comfort you in this time of need? Yes, sir.
Verse 28, I lost something here. They're passed by Midianites merchantmen,
Mm-hmm.
and they drew and lifted up Joseph. So is this saying that the Midianites lifted Joseph out and sold him to the Egyptians?
Well, the brothers would have. The brothers are the ones that sold him, right?
But they sold him to the Midianites.
They sold him to the Ishmaelites.
Okay, what are the Midianites? Why are they in that?
Well,
At that moment?
they passed by. It just says that they passed by and they drew up and lifted up Joseph out of the pit. They may have helped him or whatever, but he was sold to the Ishmaelites.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in verse 36, the Midianites sold him into Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
So were the Midianites also Ishmaelites?
That's what I see.
I would see that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I could see that because you're dealing with as you're going through when where was it in verse 27 it says, come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and let not our hand be upon him. And then you have the Midianites merchantmen. I'd say it'd probably be the same.
Okay.
Just I would.
That clears it up then.
Yeah, but I mean, I would say either the sons drug him up or the Midianites, Ishmaelites helped him up, but he was sold to the Ishmaelites, and yeah, I'd say they'd be the same. Yeah.
Just an observation. So, when I go to verse 11,
Mm-hmm.
and let's see, and his brethren envied him, but his father observed the same.
Mm-hmm.
Previous verse, they're saying, what are we supposed to bow down to you too?
Yeah.
Some respectful. They come to some recognition in verse 11.
I would say so.
I guess I'm wondering, would they not know the envious nature of the brothers?
I'm sure they would.
I know we can't see everything you said.
No.
But I would have to guess he must have had some talk with them. And there's nothing there that says he did.
There's not. Because then the next one you see is verse 12, and his brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem, right? So they go off. They're supposed to be going over into Shechem, and that's all that Joseph and Jacob know about, that they've gone over to Shechem. And he says, well, why don't you go join them and help them out?
Might have been a little hesitant to say.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Just, an observation. I don't know.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those. There's things in there that we're not told right there, but I mean, whether or not that they talked to the dad and said, we're pretty upset about this or not. But again, you see that verse 11, it says, but the father observed the saying, and it could be because he's come to grips with it, or just the fact that he loved him more.
But he's using Jacob to rat out the other brother.
Huh?
He's using Jacob is using Joseph to rat out the other brother. See, it's back in 2, it says, and he brought the evil report.
Mm-hmm.
So Jacob's just using Joseph. Then over here he said again, in 14, he says, bring me word again. So that's one of the reasons the brothers hate him, because he's pampered.
Tattletale.
Yeah. Yeah, he's overtelling tales. Yeah, in verse 2. Yeah.
And then Jacob's using Joseph to get the evil report.
I don't know if he's using that, but he knows that the evil report's coming.
Send him out then.
Well,
One of these boys are crazy.
No, he knows they are because he remembers what happened before.
Those dukes back in the last chapter,
Yeah,
Dukes of Hazzard and all that.
yeah.
I mean, I think Jacob is as much at fault for choosing one brother, one son over the other son.
Well,
That would be crazy.
that's a human nature type thing, right? And yeah, that's
No, you can't choose one.
well, you can't, but you do. I mean, let's be honest.
Tell them all.
I know I'm not my favorite, my mom and dad's favorite, but well, he's the only one, right?
Oh, well, that makes him the least favorite. What-
Exactly. See, so he gets to bounce out.
Yeah, how do you like that?
But no, and that's why I said earlier, like insert the joke there. It's like everybody says they don't, but everybody does. And you know, and I understand what you're saying as kids, if you had kids and things like that. But it's one of those things like there's something. I don't know if it's him using him or not. There's something different with that. I don't know if I would go so far as saying, well, he's going to use him to get some information, but
One kid in the family
yeah,
tattling on the other one.
yeah,
You gotta straighten that kid out.
He's not tattling, he's
Yeah.
speaking the truth.
yeah. He's telling them that.
Tattling, you don't go tell.
He's
One of my kids come to me and they start tattling on the other one.
Yeah.
First thing I say is, look, you're not a rat. You don't go tell on the other one. I said, look, you protect them and help them, but
You're like snitches get stitches, right? No. But I mean, yeah. But the thing is he knows he's going to get the straight information from Joseph and not the others, because of how the others have acted in the past, and that's what I don't think he's using him to tattle on the others. I think he knows that he's going to get the truth from Joseph. No, he's 17 at this time.
brought back their evil report.
Mm-hmm.
Because they weren't doing
Well, he's telling them this is what the other brothers are doing. And that's all it is. It's not like he's not like, I'm going to send you out to get a report on them. He's coming back and saying, Dad, this is what's going on out there. Yeah,
I know there's a beginning and an end to this whole thing.
yeah,
God sees it.
Mhm.
So there has to, these events have to happen as they happen.
Well, and that's part of it too. But also you got to think Joseph is one of those. Who's he a picture of?
Christ.
That's the thing, right? When Christ goes to his earthly ministry, God already knows all the things that Israel's doing wrong. But what he's doing is he's confirming, here's what's going on. He's giving the report back. And so you have the same thing that's taking place there. And so again, you get back to that idea of what he's doing is, Father, you sent me. This is what they're doing. God didn't send Jesus to find out how bad they're doing. He already knows. What he's doing is he's reporting back, here's what's going on, and they're just confirming this is how far Israel's gone. So you see I see the same thing kind of taking place there.
And that's the relationship between Jacob and Joseph,
Mhm.
God and Jesus.
Yeah. So that'd be the God the Father and God the Son, yeah. And that's kind of the issue that I want us to be able to think about there too. But I mean, I could see what you're saying, but I think there's something else that's taking place there too. Yeah. Do you have a question?
Is there any significance to verse 19 while behold is being capitalized?
Just the beginning of a statement, I would say, because they're saying something.
Well, I mean, but like, you can look down a couple other verses, and that's not common. Like in verse 25, and behold, the company of Ishmaelites. I mean, like,
It's not
Well, they're not speaking. Some person's not speaking there, but there is in verse 19.
Rather than use quotation marks to indicate
okay, I
someone's
see that.
speaking,
Yeah.
just uses the capital letter.
Yeah, so that would be the difference because they're actually saying it in verse 19. Now, if we wanted to go farther and you take a look at the behold statements, which talk about Christ, there could be some things there too. Like when he shows up, John the Baptist says what? Behold, here cometh the Lamb of God who taketh away the sins of the world. It's the same idea of behold, this dreamer cometh, right? So you could go into that far if you wanted to, but no, they're actually saying that right there, so that's why it would be there. But that's a good question.
Back in verse 9, the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars
Mhm.
Is there some significance to 11 stars other than that there are 11 suns?
I would say that that's probably what it is.
11 suns.
It would be because in the next verse you see, and he told it to his father and to his brethren, and his father rebuked him. So he recognizes him as the sun, the mother as the moon, and then the 11 stars would be the 11 brothers. Yeah, that I wouldn't think it would be. There's probably other things that would go along with that, but Jacob's response to that dream would let me know that that's what would be a reference to. Yeah. Like I said, there's probably some other things as well, but the immediate context there would be the mother and the father and the 11 brothers. Yeah.
One of the remarkable things to me is that Joseph's mother is Rachel and she's dead.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a resurrection statement as well.
That's true. Yeah.
That is one of the reasons I think Jacob observes it.
Probably. No, I could see that too, because that would be his son with Rachel. Yeah. Yeah. And that would be, again, that's the theme. Part of the promise that God made to Abraham all the way through is that issue of resurrection. So yeah,
So he would know something there.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, I was wondering that.
I would think so, because I mean it's not Zilpah and Bilhah. Neither one of those are his mother, so there's something else there that would be. So I could see that too. But that's good stuff. All right. So again, kind of keeping those things in mind as we're going through, taking a look at Joseph and things like that. Notice in verse 26, in 37:26. Notice in chapter 37, verse 26. After they come up with this idea, verse 26, and Judah said unto his brethren, what profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh, and his brethren were content. So Judah's idea is what? Let's sell him. All right, and of course they end up selling him for what? 20 pieces of silver in verse 28. And that gets us ready for chapter 38, because then you have this parenthetical where they're going to start dealing with Judah. All right. So anything else in 37 that kind of jumps out or we want to look at?
Correlated to selling Jesus for,
He ends up being sold for 30, right? But there's still that issue of and when Judas does it, he sells him off to be killed. Here they're selling him off to be a servant, right? But yeah, there's some parallels there as well. One of the best, as I said, pictures. Joseph is one of the best pictures of Jesus Christ. We'll kind of see that a little bit more as we go through. All right. So chapter 38, verse 1. And it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brethren and turned into a certain Adulamite, whose name was Hira. And Judah saw there was a daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shuah. And he took her and went in unto her, and she conceived and bare a son, and he called his name Er. And she conceived again and bare a son, and she called his name Onan. And she yet again conceived and bare a son, and called his name Shelah. And he was at Chezib, which she bare when she bare him. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. Now, you think about what's taking place there. What do we have is, what do we know about Judah's firstborn? He was what? Wicked in the sight of the Lord. Now, you got to think about how wicked does he have to be that God would have to take him? Right? So there's something that you've got some time between his firstborn and this last one, right? So Judah's like, well, I'm going to go and get a wife for my firstborn, and what happens is the Lord slew him. And again, you got to think, how bad was Jacob's boys? What they just did with Joseph, they didn't get slanged, slanged. Yeah, slooted. They didn't get slain. So you got to think about how bad he could have been. And notice in verse 8, and Judah said unto Onan, go in unto thy brother's wife and marry her, and raise up thy brother. Raise up seed to thy brother. Now, that was a common thing in that particular time, is if a man and a woman are together and the man gets killed, then the next son would take that wife. And we'll see that a lot that shows up, and there's some other things that's going to show up a little bit later on, so kind of tuck that in the back of your mind as well, because that'll show up a little bit later on. And raise up seed to thy brother. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his, and it came to pass when he went in unto his brother's wife that he spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also. Now you got to think, Onan is like, oh, I don't want to have a child with this woman, because this is not my lineage, and it's not my wife. It was given to me, but it displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also. Now, and again, that issue of you're going to take, the next son's going to take the other brother's wife, that's something that's going to show up a little bit later on. We kind of see that first show up here.
When it says the Lord slew her, is it based on something? Or, I mean, is there a point that you can get so evil that God can start slaying people?
Apparently so. Now, we don't know how wicked that is, but he was wicked in the sight of the Lord. Now, and again, we don't know anything here that tells us what he did or how he got to that point that he was that wicked. We're told, here's why God slew him, because he was wicked.
Yeah, so he doesn't reproduce.
Yeah.
Because he didn't go along with that plan.
And Onan didn't want to go along with the plan, because that's what was supposed to be taking place, because that he was supposed to take his brother's wife. That was supposed to be the next thing up.
You think he's just trying to make a point here?
I'd say so.
Random chapter? Because this is a random chapter.
Well, it's not random, but it's going back to show us a little bit about Judah and who he is. Yeah.
Both of these Shua sons too.
Huh?
Both of these were the Canaanite, the Shua person's.
Yeah. Yeah. So they were both, and they both would have been Canaanites. And so then he didn't want him to. Were they supposed to be with Canaanites? No. Right? So that's part of it. Now, is that enough for God to say, I want to slay you? I mean, that's part of what it is, but there's other things. We're just told he's wicked. Right? Mm-hmm. She was Er's wife. Yeah. Yeah, Tamar was supposed to be Er's wife, yeah. And so then we see Er and Onan both get slain, right? Verse 11, then said Judah to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow at thy father's house till Shelah my son be grown. For he said, lest peradventure he die also, as his brethren did. And Tamar went and dwelt in his father's house, in her father's house. So he says what? Now that my other two sons are dead, wait until my third one's old enough, and then you can partake, be married to him, unless the same thing takes place with him. Right? Now, verse 12, and in the process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died. And Judah was comforted and went up unto his sheep shears to Timnath, he and his friend Hira the Adulamite. And it was told Tamar, saying, behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Timnath to shear his sheep. And she put her widow's garments off her, and covered her with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place, which is by the way of Timnath, for she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given unto him to wife. Now, what is it that Judah promised back there in verse 11 is, once Shelah gets old enough, what's going to happen? I want you all to get married. Over here in verse 14, what do we find out? He's old enough, and it's not taking place yet. Verse 15, when Judah saw her, he thought her to be an harlot, because she'd covered her face. And he turned unto her by the way, and said, go to, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee, for he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What wilt thou give me, that thou mayest come in unto me? And he said, I will send thee a kid from the flock. And she said, Wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it? And he said, What pledge shall I give thee? And she said, Thy signet and thy bracelets and thy staff that is in thine hand. And he gave it to her, came in unto her, and she conceived by him. So here you've got Judah doing what? This is the same guy that said what? Let's not kill our brother, let's sell him off and make money. Here, of course, does he know who she is? He doesn't know who she is, but he's making this deal with her, and he goes in and they conceive. In verse 19, and she arose and went away and laid by her veil from her and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend the Adulamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he found her not. So to me, it's an interesting thing. She's taken her widow garments off. She's covered herself up. And so then here, as she's leaving, what she do is she puts back on, she puts her veil away, puts her garments of widowhood back on, and then leaves. And Judah sends out his friend, the Adulamite, to go and find her, and he doesn't find her, right? Because what's he giving her? His signet, the bracelets, the staff, giving all this to her, right? Verse 21, Then he asked the men of that place, saying, Where is the harlot that was openly by the wayside? And they said, There was no harlot in this place. And he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. And also the men of the place said, There was no harlot in this place. And Judah said, Let her take it to her, lest we be shamed, because, behold, I sent this kid, and thou hast not found her. And it came to pass about 3 months after, that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar, thy daughter-in-law, hath played the harlot, and also, behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judah said, Bring her forth, and let her be burnt. So he finds out what she was doing. They said, There is no harlot. Now, why did they say that there was no harlot? She had her widow stuff on. She didn't have her face. Remember, she had her stuff. She took her veil off and put her garments of her widowhood back on, and she leaves. They don't see a harlot anywhere because she's not got her face covered up. She's in her widowhood stuff. So they don't see a harlot. And what's Judah think? He comes out and he says, Where's the harlot? Right, well, we didn't see one. But it's not until here that he finds out Tamar, thy daughter-in-law, hath played the harlot, and also, behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judah said, Bring her forth and let her be burnt. Now, his decision is what? Let's get rid of her. Verse 25. When she was brought forth, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, By the man whose these are, am I with child? And she said, Discern, I pray thee, whose are these, the signet and the bracelets and the staff? And Judah acknowledged them and said, She hath been more righteous than I. That's a statement. Why? Because that I gave her not to Shelah my son, and he knew her again no more. What did he promise to Tamar? I'm going to send Shelah. As soon as he gets old enough, he doesn't do that. And she comes back and she says, who's this signet, and who's the bracelet, and who's the staff belong to? He realizes it's his and says what? He recognizes, I was in the wrong because I did not give her Shelah. And the main part there at the verse 26 at the end there is, he knew her again no more. And of course, how those events transpired were by trickery anyway. But verse 27, And it came to pass in the time of her travail that, behold, twins were in her womb. Now, you stop and you think, did she get burnt? No. Because he understood what was going on. He figured it out, right? Verse 28. And it came to pass when she travailed that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, This came out first. And it came to pass as she drew back his hand, that behold, his brother came out, and she said, How hast thou broken forth? This breach be upon thee. Therefore his name was called Pharez. And afterward came out his brother that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zerah. Now, here we're introduced to these two twins, and it's interesting what's taking place is the midwife puts a scarlet thread around the wrist of the one, so she'll know which one was first. What happens is, second one comes out, and then she pulls out the second one, or the second one pulls out, and then the first one. And an interesting thing about that, who is the firstborn? Did it end up being the first one that came out, or the first one that they put the scarlet thread on? Huh? So you see that there's a usurping there almost, right? Again, we see the second born. To me, it's just one of those things you just kind of see and you take note of and pay attention to and go with that. And again, like I said, it's we're taken in to see a little bit more about Judah that we were introduced a long time ago, but we saw in verse 26 of chapter 37, we're told a little bit more about him and some things that are taking place there. And when we take a look at this, how was these two children conceived? And it wasn't in the order in which they should have been, right? Because it was by Judah, not his son. And of course, how that went down anyway to begin with. So we see some things that are taking place there, and so we have these two, Pharez and Zerah. Now, normally, what we're told is we're given what those names mean. In this passage, we're not.
Except for, that breach.
I think breach probably would, because you see in verse 29, this breach be upon thee, therefore his name was called Pharez. And afterward came out his brother that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zerah. So yeah, we see the breach there for Pharez, but here Zerah, we don't really have anything. So you could say Pharez there would mean this breach be upon thee. So there's something else that's going to be taking place there that we can take a look at a little bit later on because we're running late on time.
Is this chapter to show the lineage of Judah? Because this is where David and Christ come out of?
That'd be part of it, yeah.
Because he's the only one broken out of it with Joseph.
Yeah.
We know he didn't come from Joseph.
No, and he didn't come from that. So I think that would be wise, just to kind of let us know. And it's interesting because when we started going through the book of Matthew, we looked at the lineage, and there were 7 women that we looked at that you have the lineage of Jesus Christ. So I think that's probably a little bit more of what it was coming from. But again, as we've seen over and over again, does God look at the very best person? I want to take that very best person, or is it most usually it's the exact opposite, right? So there's something there. So that's why we would be interested or introduced to him there, just to have that lineage, right?
He was already married to Sheila.
Mm.
And then he goes into a harlot.
No, she had passed.
Yeah, his wife had passed, right?
Oh, she had?
Yeah. No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all.
So question,
Yeah. No, it doesn't make it any better at all.
so when Onan, verse 9,
Mm-hmm.
he's supposed to marry his wife.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious on this. It says, and when he went into her, and then he spilled on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Huh?
Is there a law or something I don't know about that says he has to go into it?
Well, part of it would be, but Judas says, "Go in unto thy brother's wife and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother." And that would be,
God incorporates that into the law.
yeah, that it ends up being later in the law. But this is something that Judas says, "Here's what I want you to do." But it is something later on, part of that law that God gives the nation of Israel. That's where that'll show up there, and that's why I said that's one of those things put in the back of your mind because it'll show up a little bit later on. Yeah,
Verse 9 says.
I think it's when you look at,
To give seed to his
yeah, he didn't want to continue that line for his brother. Yeah, so there's, I mean, the guy was bad enough he got slain. Probably don't want to. Oh, you're Ur's kid. No, he's owning. Yeah.
So, and not killed exclusively because he disobeyed his father.
Based on this, I would say yes.
But that was before the law was given to him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But there was no law.
Yeah, there was no law. Yeah,
This was just,
yeah, yeah. And this is, yeah. So I mean, then the idea there is, Judas one says, "Go in unto your brother's wife," and he doesn't do that. So that tells us that Judah found out, and so the big thing there is, well, the Lord knew exactly, and He slew him also.
why would God kill him if that's what's happening here?
Mhm.
I mean,
Well,
what happened to Shechem with brothers?
well, still, the way I kind of think about it is, you're still dealing with like Judah as God the Father. I've spoken. You're supposed to do what I say. Otherwise, you're going to be cut off, right? And it'd be by faith that you would go and do that.
Not knowing it.
Huh?
Judah went in unto her, not knowing,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing happened to him. So, I mean,
No, that's true.
it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, it seemed almost contradictory.
Well, again, there's nothing there that tells us why, other than Er being wicked. And then even in verse 10, it says, "And the thing which he did," which is he didn't go into his brother's wife, and he spilled it on the ground and all that stuff, lest he should give seed to his brother. That thing that he did displeased the Lord, and he took him. Oh, absolutely. And again, we're not privy. That's a constant thing that we see. There's a lot of stuff that we're not privy to that they're doing here. But I mean, Judas said, "Go do this," and Onan didn't. And of course, what we see in verse 9 takes place, and that's the thing that displeased the Lord. And I don't know if it's even saying that the fact that he disobeyed Judah, but it could be because of what he did in verse 9 that displeased.
Bigger picture too, that's happening, which is Genesis 30:16 and the seed.
Mm-hmm.
And God has given the earth to Abraham and then his descendants, Isaac and then Jacob. Now Jacob has sons. So they all know that there is a seed to come.
Yeah.
Male,
Yeah.
and which would describe Tamar's strange behavior.
Yeah.
They do know about the prophesied seed.
Yeah.
And and Onan want no part of it, just like Esau didn't want any part of the birthright. They
Yeah.
were despising God's word.
Yeah.
So it's not just about human opinion and
Mm-mm.
how things appear to us. It's about God's plan from the ages.
And that's what we've seen all the way through is that seed line going through. Yeah.
So does that kind of, I'm struggling with does God have an order of what he views as worse? Because, I mean, to Lisa's point, yeah, God said, go and multiply and the seed's coming, but God also gave Eve to Adam,
Mm-hmm.
telling him, one woman to one man. Here Judah is sleeping with a harlot. Is God saying that disobeying
No, that's not it at all. Plus,
Well, all I know is Enoch died and Judah's just chilling.
because well, he died because he displeased the Lord. That's the purpose that he died. The fact that he didn't go in unto the daughter or his brother's wife and conceive. That's why I said in verse 9 is the problem. Because he spilled it on the ground because he didn't want to give his brother seed. That's what displeased the Father. That's what displeased the Lord. That's why he slew him. And again, it's not, even if God does have, he knows why he's doing it and what he's doing. He's righteous no matter what, and we can't question him on that.
He kept the line alive.
He kept the line alive through Tamar. And that's the, no, I know, but
I'm just confused because it seems like he has an order of what's most important there.
well, the seed's the most important there. And that again, that goes all the way back. Abraham, he makes a promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we see that goes through.
But at this point, they don't know that they're the line.
They don't know that they're the line, but they know it's coming through Jacob. One of those 12 is going to continue that seed line. Huh? And again, I think that's the point, that God's not going to pick the best of what we think's best or what we like best. He's going to he's got it. He's going to get it no matter what. Base. Yeah, and the fact that Judah is the one that says, "Let's not kill him. Let's make money off of him." I mean, you take a look at that, and it's like, why would you sell your own brother for 20 pieces of silver? Yeah, half brother. But I mean, huh?
He's only a half.
Yeah. If he was a full brother, I'd have gotten 40 pieces. But I think that's the main issue there, and I think that's why we're introduced to Judah a little bit more in verse 38 and the shame that he has that takes place there. But through his shame, God keeps that lineage alive. And Tamar is one of those 7 women that we talked about when we were going through Matthew at the very beginning. No, you're fine. But that lineage, we see that still goes through, even though she pretended to be a harlot and deceived him. That lineage still goes through Tamar.
He wasn't the only one who considered a harlot in that lineage.
No, there's not. There's a lot. Yeah.
Am I wrong then in thinking that God, made a declaration to man that there should only be one woman with a man by sending Eve or Adam and Eve?
No.
Well, I mean, does that mean that the, multiply trumps that command of God?
Well, by this time they've multiplied quite often, right? Because the be fruitful, multiply was given to Adam and Eve, and then it was given to Noah, and then when they come off the ark, right? That's the 2 groups that he says be fruitful and multiply. And again, here there is no law against, and we'll see this as we talked about before with Abraham and the folks that came on before him and even after him, where they had multiple wives. There's not anything yet that says you can't do that, because again, they don't have that law right now. And of course, that shows up a little bit later on as well.
Adam being given Eve, that was God saying no.
That's the way that it's designed. Yes,
Is that not a proclamation by God to man?
it's
I think that was just like a
yeah.
suggestion.
No, it's this is how it's going to work. Man and woman become one. One man, one woman become one. That's the pattern. That's how it's going to work. That's how that's how he's designed it to work. Now, just because Judah runs up on this woman and sees that she's a harlot and says, "Let's go in unto each other," that doesn't say that God's saying, "Well, that's okay, but you can't be evil and disobey me." That's not the point. Is, well, this one's better than that one. Just because he messed up, again, it's that issue of God's going to use something that we would look at and say, that's messed up, and God uses that for good.
Judah would have never went into her.
If he would have seen her in her widowhood, he would not have gone into her. Well, and that the fact that she hides herself, but the fact she hides herself, knowing what's going to take place, You kind of see that. But yeah, that, and again, it is one man, one woman, but here that seed needed to get, it was going to go through Tamar somehow or some way. Whether through him or through it was designed to go through his sons. And since didn't, because obviously he was very wicked, so God took him. And then Onan wouldn't, so God took him too. And so then we have that seed line going through. What you got, Eric?
So Tamar obviously was mocked. Gonna be like before Judah had those kids with her.
Mm-hmm.
She was part of the lineage as well, already separately, right?
Well, she would have had children by the firstborn.
Right.
Onan was
But
that.
no, I meant
Yeah.
independent of that. She was already,
I don't think so.
she became part of the lineage.
She was, yeah.
She married him.
So she married
Because there's a lineage for Joseph,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lineage for Mary as well.
Yeah.
Both of those are tied.
They are.
Christ. And that's what I was wondering, was Tamar in that other lineage?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Splits after Solomon.
Yeah, it splits after Solomon because you've got the two kingdoms and all that stuff. There's some things that takes place with that too. But no, the idea is she's part of that family, part of that already because she married The fact that he was slain doesn't change the fact the seed's going to go through her. And that's why Onan's supposed to go to her. And so then he chooses not to. And then Judah, by being tricked, if you will, goes in unto her and continues that line.
That lineage, that Zerah is the rightful. He was the rightful.
That would have been the one that first came out. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And again, we'll see some of the stuff with that as well. So
Yeah, it looks like Onan got he's out playing ball one day. Father says, I need you to go over here to the thing. He's like, I don't like her. And then all of a sudden God killed him.
yeah. Well, listen to what your dad says, right?
That's the
Yeah. No, but I mean,
They haven't been home before.
no, they have. But I mean, and that shows up in the commandments as well, right? Yeah, if you want to live long on the earth, obey your parents. But that's the first one that's God promised, right?
There was no, that wasn't there.
Of course, that wasn't there at that time. And again, that wasn't there. And
He was 17, get over here.
yeah,
And he's like, what? And then he's like,
yeah,
I think Genesis, chapter 38 is required reading for soap opera writers.
I think God just likes to watch his people cheat.
Well, and it's interesting because, like, I have conversations with my mom, and she's like, "How can God look on this world the way it is and not stop it?" And I was like, "It's been worse. It's never been good. However bad it is now, it's been the same, if not worse, throughout history. And God's showing His wisdom through all that, and His patience and His long suffering and His mercy and His grace. And when we, well, as I said, when I read the verse earlier in 1 Corinthians 15 about having no hope, I mean, when you have no hope and you have no tie to what God's doing, then you look at everything in life and it's like, well, it all is just happenstance and it doesn't matter what I do, so I'm going to go do and fulfill my lusts and forget whatever it hurts anybody else, and which is the exact opposite way to go about life. But
I guess it may have been bad right before the flood. It may have been worse before.
well, obviously, then that's why I said, like, it's been worse, bad enough to where God would send the flood, right? And again, here, all we know about is he was wicked enough that God said, you don't need to be a part of this lineage. I'm going to take your life. So there's something with that.
There is no best of the best.
No, there isn't. There's not. And the fact that we think that there is. Yeah, I mean, have we read about anybody from Adam all the way up to Judah so far that we're like, that's a guy I want to be like? Not really. And that's the point, right? And we learn about God's patience, God's long suffering, no matter what, all the people, and we look and say, well, he chose that person, so they've got to be fantastic. And it's not. He chose them because he knew their heart, right? And we've talked about that as well, because that's the issue, the heart issue. Even though Judah does what he does, was his heart right?
God is gonna accomplish his will no matter what. He can only use
Yeah.
flawed,
Yeah,
sinful
that's all you have.
to get it done.
Yeah. I mean, if you have junk to work with, what do you expect to have? And he says, I'm going to make my plan work even though you're corrupt. My perfect, uncorrupted plan is going to work no matter your corruption. And that's part of it too. Yeah. And we're like, well, he finally figured it. No. Randy's not here with you to bring that up today, so. Yeah. You're just lone wolf perfect today, so. But I mean, again, you see that, and that's what God's done throughout history, right? Is He's chosen the basest of things to accomplish what He's done. So and those are things again to kind of keep in our mind as we go through. Chapter 39, we get back into Joseph and what takes place with him, and then Pharaoh and all the things that take place over there in Egypt with him. So.
So, is there a reason that the Bible chose to pick Judah out? I mean, there is obviously, and just showed him
Yeah.
and all the flaws in his.
And it again, yeah, because you got to think, this is Moses. The Holy Spirit through Moses writes this in retrospect, right? He's already lived through that, and that's why we see some of the things that we see, when we were looking at Jacob wrestling, and he said that's why the children of Israel don't eat that to this day. He's looking back saying, here's why, that's the thing. And it's the same thing here. He's letting the nation of Israel know at this time, here's your lineage, here's who you are, and when you think that you're good, just remember where you've come from, right? And just imagine what God can do with the worst that we can come up with, because that's what He's doing, right? All right.
I think Judah in verse 26, it looks like he sort of came around a little bit in heart, because he didn't deny that those were his signets and everything. And
Yeah.
He acknowledged that she had been more righteous than he had.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe
I don't
that-
think he could have denied it. It was his signet, right?
Yeah.
He could have, but it says he didn't.
Well,
Yeah.
He didn't
right,
deny
but
it.
if it's his ring, there we go. Yeah, that's
He
Judah.
didn't hide it.
Yeah.
That's what so many men do, like the guy who stole the gods and hid them
Mhm.
in his tent.
Mm-hmm.
And he got swallowed up,
Yeah.
and so it was death to him.
And was it Rachel did that too? Yeah. And that's the normal thing. Like when Satan gets Eve and Eve gets Adam, what do? Is they hide. God shows up and says, "Well, Adam, where are you?" And here again, this is in a microcosm. If you think of it that way, is who do these belong to? She's calling him to accountability, and he says, "Yes, it's mine." And that's why he recognizes her and says that about her. He could have easily, thinking the way that most men would have thought, particularly at that time, is all I got to do is take my stuff back. I can snuff her out. I don't have to worry about it, right? But he acknowledges, yeah, this is mine, and she's more righteous than I. Yeah, that's the whole point. And that's why, again, we're introduced a little bit more to Judah in chapter 37, and then 38 we're told a little bit more about him, and we see that lineage, and of course that's brought up there. And then we get back into Joseph again. But yeah, good stuff. All right.